Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegrand, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Houston Astros. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. A very special episode as Dan Thompson is in my tiny makeshift studio in person. We got to attend a game together. And here's what I learned, Dan. This was a very fun series. I was so happy to be able to spend at least one of these games with you. But after 2 beers, Dan, you just become me. It's amazing.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, your takes become less reasonable.
Oh, wow.
You tend to be more irritable and upset. It was amazing, the transformation. When you were a beer ahead of me, I was like, oh my goodness, that's the true Dan Thompson. He's just able to keep himself so much more in check without the alcohol coursing through his veins.
I think that's good. Coursing is a strong word. I think it's a little extreme. We had a great time. So we went to the game on Friday together. I actually got to go to every game of the series. I'm playing The Bachelor this weekend. Not the TV reality series. I'm just a bachelor this weekend. So I crashed on your couch even.
You did? Well, you got to bed one night and then you moved to the couch. It's a small house, folks.
Oh my gosh. It was great fun. I went today, and so what a fun series. They take 2 out of 3 from the Astros, and even the loss was entertaining and maddening. It gave us stuff to talk about. This was great.
Lots to talk about. A quick shout out to listeners Jessica and Josh. Just wonderful. We got to talk to them on Friday. We met up. We took some pictures. We got some drinks. It was very nice of them to get us some alcohol, Dan, which again led me to see your true colors, Dan, which was just, it made me feel a little better, because one thing I'll say about meeting listeners out in the wild, Dan, it bothers me that every time the conversation starts the same way. Well, I basically agree with Dan 90% of the time. Why is that, Dan? There has to be more people like me, or at least.
But then they went on to say things that they agreed with you about. So I think I think there's a little bit of bias there. I think they just like me better. They want me to agree with them, I think is what they're trying to say.
It's because you sound more reasonable.
I guess so. Well, I am more reasonable. All right. Well, we have lots to talk about here. We should get into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, Dan. This is the one we were in person for, and we always stay till the end. And
absolutely.
This was fun. We had Hogs with us too. It was the whole group, and we're having a good time talking to each other. And in the 9th at this point, we're still watching the game.
Sure.
And we're joking, oh, this would be a crazy comeback, right? And then, Dan, it starts to happen. Don't give me hope.
Yeah.
And I start, in my heart, I know that they're not going to win this baseball game. But my goodness, a score of 13-12, Dan, when it probably should have been 13-5, just makes you think that this was a much more exciting baseball game until the bottom of the 9th.
Yeah, and you know what? It's actually another 1-run loss for the Twins here. They're 7th loss in a row by a run, even though it obviously was a lot more. Yeah, they scored 12 runs for the second straight game, but they lost. The only pitcher who was okay was Jorge Alcala, but everybody else allows at least 3 runs. It starts in the top of the 2nd when the Astros take a 3-0 lead. But the Twins actually chip away, and they actually take a 4-3 lead in the bottom of the 5th when Miranda's double brings in Manny Margot. Miranda had already homered earlier. We're going to talk a lot more about him. Top of the 4th, Carlos Correa makes just a ridiculously great play behind second base to get Pena, and he makes these plays so casually.
Yeah.
His feet move so frequently to get to those baseballs. It's amazing to watch him in person like that.
You would think that his parents were dancers, but no, he's no Max Kepler, Dan.
So top of the 6th, the Astros retake the lead with 3 singles and a double here. This is what gets Pablo really into trouble here. And then with the top of the 7th, with Josh Winder on the mound, and we will talk more about Josh Winder staying on the mound. The Astros add another at 7-4. But the Twins had an answer. In the bottom of the 7th, they have a 2-strike RBI single from Kepler, and then they squander chances. Buxton and Lee both strike out. And then Josh Winder comes up again. He hits Jose Altuve. Now, he hit him on the hand. This was a frequent thing where both teams were getting struck by baseballs by pitchers in key locations on their body. Do you think anybody at any point was throwing at anyone in this series?
there was never a moment where any of these thrown ats were intentional. First of all, look at who's on the mound when they're hitting people. Let's start there.
Right.
Like, this is not the A lineup that we're talking about. And secondly, these two teams, they don't have nearly enough bad blood. But after this series, Dan, I'm thinking maybe next series, if this happens again, I might have to rethink my answer.
Yeah, and top of the 8th, so after the Altuve gets hit in the hand, the Astros score 3 more runs, partly because Manny Margot can't play left field. He dropped a base. I mean, it was a drop in the way that Luis Robert dropping a baseball in center field for the White Sox. And it didn't feel meaningful, but it was another one of those plays that in retrospect feels super meaningful.
Very meaningful. Yeah, if we had a time machine, Dan, a lot of things in this game would be very different.
Like, we would have had to go back and tell Rocco, like, just so you know, you're going to score 7 runs in the bottom of the 9th. Can you maybe well, anyway, I don't want to preview too much there, but bottom of the 8th, kind of a weird play, and this was a play that made its rounds on social media. Joey Loperfido in right field catches, drops, and then catches with his bare hand a ball in right field that would have made Max Kepler proud, though let's be honest, Max is not going to make this catch because he's not making it with his feet, but this is with his agile and nimble brain that I think is Max Kepler's weakest point.
Well, I don't know. We have an episode titled Max Kepler's Calculus, so he must be decent.
Well, maybe. Yeah. But he's not a good base runner. He's not. Anyway.
Correct. Yeah, but Max Kepler struggles mentally. But this one was so weird live because one ump called it an out and one ump called it safe, and Christian Vazquez did not know whether to stay at second or to run to first, and like the umpires are trying to sort all this out. They could not confirm whether this ball touched the wall or not. They say that the call, it wasn't out. He caught it. You can watch the replay. Apparently, if it made the round on social medias, I assume there's some people arguing that it does touch the wall. Mm-hmm. Really difficult to say. Pretty ridiculous play regardless.
So then it goes to the top of the 9th. Bregman hits a 3-run home run off of Cody Funderburk, which appears to put the game out of reach. It's 13-5, and we think, well, let's just see what happens. And Rocco is clearly in the mode of, well, we're waving the white flag, because in the bottom of the 9th, Austin Martin pinch hits for Miranda, but he singles. And that comes between strikeouts by Margot and Farmer, and we're thinking, okay, well, whatever. Good for him. He got a hit, but then it just kept going.
Yeah, so Kepler gets on with a single, Buxton singles, Lee singles, Vasquez doubles, and then they have to bring in Josh Hader, which honestly, even if they did nothing else at this point, that would have been enough, right? Like, make them use Hader so they don't have him for the next day. But then Correa hits a grand slam.
I want to build a championship culture.
On a high hit, Dan. It went so high, I thought there's no way it makes it. And the Astros left fielder at that point jumps to make the play. He can't because it's just over the wall. And all of a sudden, it's 13-12 with Manny Margot coming up to the plate.
And I gotta be honest, I had no fear here. If I'm an Astros fan, this is the guy you want to see at the plate, right? It's Manny Margot. I know he hits lefties well, but he strikes out. No Jeffers coming in because a day off for Ryan Jeffers is, well, we'll talk about game 3, a day off. Game over. Miranda, though, goes 4 for 4. He sets a Twins record with hits in 10 straight at-bats. At the time, he's 2 off the MLB record, and so that brings us into Game 2, a Twins win, 9-3.
Yeah, Game 2 was a much more straightforward, sound performance by the Twins. So Miranda, I am not throwing away my shot, picks up right where he left off on Friday, Dan. And so you were in attendance for this. And did people realize it? Like, when his first at-bat came up, were they up? Were they ready to cheer?
They totally were. People were absolutely stoked about this. And it helped that they were just, they were having no trouble against Hunter Brown, who had been super good lately. Yeah. He'd only given up 1 run in his last 5 starts total. And the Twins tagged him for 7 runs in the first 3 innings, and we're sitting in your seats next to the bullpen, and nobody's up for the Astros at all. So it was pretty clear after Game 1 was a bullpen game for the Astros that they needed Hunter Brown to give him innings. And he did give them enough innings, but the Twins scored a lot of runs during those innings.
Yeah, so Miranda, we'll talk more about him later, but he reaches base 3 times, 2 hits after being hit by pitch. And how deflated, Dan, was the crowd when he got hit by pitch? Like, normally you're sort of neutral because you're like, okay, I get a base runner. As long as the guy's not injured, it works. But like in that moment, everybody wants Miranda to get a hit.
Well, and then what it did is it threw everybody, at least in our section, into a tizzy of searching the internet to try to find out, does the streak still count?
Yes.
Like if he got hit, I mean, it did in the at-bats. So he does extend his streak to 12 straight at-bats because remember, a hit by pitch is just a plate appearance.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty great. He's only the fourth MLB player to ever do that. The first since 1952. The guy can flat out hit.
So Castro, Dan, not to be outdone, which is normally when I say that about Willie Castro, it's like satirically and like he like drops a ball in the outfield or something. No, not to be outdone by Miranda. He has 3 hits. And then on top of that, we're going to talk more about this, but Lee hits his first MLB home run. Thank you. Yes, I did call that.
Yeah,
yes.
True.
And then Buxton adds another home run later for insurance. It was the Bomba squad all over again, Dan.
It wasn't. And actually that home run felt pretty important because Joe Ryan goes 5 2/3, but he's in a jam when he leaves. 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. But he needs Alcala to come in and throw just 2 pitches, but it does get out of a bases loaded jam when it was just 7-3. So Joe Ryan does end up getting the win. Cole Sands in the perfect Cole Sands moment gets 2 clean innings. Thielbar in the perfect Caleb Thielbar moment gets the 9th. He lowers his ERA actually to 6.30. But hey, it is going down. And so we talked about Brown already. His 7 earned runs that he allowed are the second most of the season. And so we head into game 3, the rubber match.
Yeah, so Twins come away with this one 3-2. Bottom of the first, there's a bit of drama. I'm on the radio at this point. I'm coming home from church, and I hear them, and I'm a little annoyed. You got Gladden and you got Atterbury on the call, and they won't exactly explain what's happened to Carlos Correa. They say that he got hit, but I'm kind of looking, I want to know very detailed, like, oh, he kind of got hit in the hand area. Give me more. Mm-hmm. Like, what part of his arm was he holding? Like, which fingers was it? Like, it just really bothered me that I didn't get a little bit more detail there. So I'm like texting you. I'm like, do you know anything?
Well, I had a good view. We were only a few rows back, and there was definitely Carlos Correa's great gesticulation, right, where he's waving his hand around, he's shaking it, and you're thinking, oh no, what happened to Carlos?
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
There was no dangling and holding up of the hand this time, but the trainer came out, took a look at him. He was walking towards first, and so I thought, okay, he's going to stay in the game, but they end up taking him out. Now, luckily, we hear a couple of innings later that it is a contusion on his one of his right fingers. He said after the game, apparently told reporters that he's going to play tomorrow, and we heard him say that recently, and he did.
Yeah, I would not have believed that to be true until after that last series, and then he hit the home run, and he, around third base, he did the weird raptor, hand symbol. Yeah.
But no, so he's out. Kyle Farmer, who nobody has any faith in, comes in. But that's okay, because Twins end up winning this game 3-2. So in the top of the second, Simeon Woods Richardson was not great early. He allowed a couple runs in the second on a sacrifice fly, and then a single by Altuve. I'm going to bring this up just for the moment. So Matt Wallner caught the sacrifice fly in left field, I think pretty clearly in foul territory. Is there any part of Matt Wallner, who was up now for the first time after a while, we'll talk about him a little bit, that says, you know what, I should let this ball drop because it's foul in a 0-0 game?
No, Dan. We talked about this on the way home.
I just wonder, is there a point at which in the season, do you have the wherewithal to think, well, if this is going to be the game-winning run, I really ought to let it fall?
Certainly, if they're going to be able to tag up and score. But that's the only time if you're going to lose the game.
All right, well, that's fine. Well, anyway, so it ends up not being a huge deal. Altuve gets a single after that. He actually missed the second game because of that bruise when he was hit by a baseball in game 1, but he's back. And so it's 2-0. But the Twins get one back in the bottom of the second on a 2-out single by Christian Vazquez, who we are going to talk about more on this episode than we have ever spoken about Christian Vazquez. It scores Buxton. It's 2-1. Bottom of the fourth, probably the strangest, most notable play of the game. So this comes after Lee singles. He looks so good. Matt Wallner, who's up for Austin Martin, who strained his oblique, getting out of the dugout to pinch run. It was a very convenient time for an injury. So he is on the injured list now. And then, so he singles hard. So Lee's at third and Wallner's at first. And Vazquez grounds out to second. And there's this thing where Altuve looks at third and Lee goes back. And so then he gets the out at second, but then Lee dashes home.
Clever girl.
And Altuve throws home, and he's got him beat. But Cesar Salazar can't hold on to the ball, and it's one of those, it's a play where Brooks Lee would have plowed over the catcher if only Brooks Lee had the physical strength and the rules allowed him to plow over a catcher. But it ends up not mattering. He's able to get around. He does score. And then Vazquez gets out, because he overran first, and he did that earlier. He almost got thrown out earlier in the game. So it's the weirdest double play, but the run does score, and Vazquez gets the RBI.
I'm so annoyed at it's like Vazquez found a lucky penny or something before this series, because it just seems like even when he does something wrong, it works out. And my whole Princess Bride, you've done something right.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know what the accent is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, folks. I don't know how to do a Spanish accent. It just seems to go his way, and I don't understand it, Dan.
No, and it went his way. And then from there, SWR, to his infinite credit, settled down. And he finished his 6 innings just 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 88 pitches, 59 strikes. And because of the way Rocco managed game 1 poorly, we're going to talk about later, this allows the Twins to very readily use Josh Staumont, Griffin Jax, and Johan Duran for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. I do have to say again that Johan Duran's entrance in the daytime is not, it's like having a campfire in the daytime. Like, it loses its power. It's like, oh, that's a nice fire, but like, why do we have one? Like, it felt like he should just kind of come out during the day, and I don't know. It wasn't inspiring. He did look good, though. He overpowered, even though he got in a little bit of trouble, he overpowered the Astros. And then comes the bottom of the 9th. Christian Vazquez is a great moment. Now, we could see that Rocco came out of the dugout between innings and talked to the umpires. So you thought, okay, well, Ryan Jeffers is going to pinch hit. He's the last guy on the bench. But he doesn't come out for Vazquez, and it seemed pretty clear that Castro was going to bat next, and then Larnach was going to be the DH as the next spot. I thought Jeffers was going to come in for him. But hey, who needs Ryan Jeffers when you got Christian Vazquez? He hits a walk-off home run to left field a little bit farther than Correa's home run a couple nights before, and the Twins win, and they win the series. And there they are now. They got 51 wins on the season, 51-39, and they're still hanging with the Guardians, who never seem to lose.
No, it's quite annoying that every time the Twins win, the Guardians win, and vice versa. I will say, I always have that whole thinking of when your numbers and your wins and loss column matches when you're below 500, like, you just want to be in the same set of tens. This is a different feeling, Dan. Mm-hmm. When the Twins' wins and losses are outside of the same tens, but it's because your wins are so high. It's so fun to be this far above 500 at this point in the season.
Totally. The Guardians are 56-32, so the Twins are still 6 back. The Royals are 49-43. They are 9 back of the Guardians, 3 back of the Twins. And it's pretty clear to me that the Twins are definitely a playoff caliber team. And they just beat a team that, the Astros have been pretty good lately. And they were, they're only 2.5 back from the Mariners. They're 46-44. I feel good after winning the series, even though they dropped game 1.
All right, well, with that, Dan, let's go ahead and jump into our segments.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett! Puckett's Picks winner.
This is one that I'm glad that the listeners won. The listeners in Puckett's Picks here, they take Miranda, and I mean, what a better time to take Miranda. He finishes with 15 points for the listeners. You, David, took Brooks Lee. To your credit, you will talk more about him later. He had 12 points. Hogs took Buxton with 8 points. I took Correa, who has 7 with an asterisk. This is the second series in a row I've picked somebody who got hurt, but all pretty good overall. How about you give us then the season standings?
Yeah, so season standings, I'm still in the lead, thankfully, with 14.5. Hogs in a close second at 11.5. And now, Dan, a tie for the coveted third place. You and the listeners both with 5 points on the season.
Yeah, and I'm way back in total points scored. So this has not been my season. But hey, heading into the All-Star break, you just never know. We should note, by the way, Carlos Correa is the Twins All-Star. They announced that.
He is the one.
So hopefully he is true to his word, and he really is good. We should mention, too, that Brooks Lee was picked for the Futures game, but he's actually not going to play because he's no longer the future. He's the present.
The future is now.
Yeah, and so Luke Keeschel, I'm butchering his name, I'm sure, but he was actually called up to, he's not called up, but he was allowed to replace Brooks Lee.
Fair enough. Well, with that, Dan, let's go on to Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
So I'm going to go with Jose Miranda.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
He goes 7 for 8 with 3 RBIs. Again, ties the MLB record for at-bats with consecutive hits with 12. I just think he's great. I have a question about Jose Miranda coming up, Dan, because I just really think that he has infinite potential to succeed in this league.
It's a credit to, I guess it's a credit to the Twins, but it's really a credit to Jose Miranda for taking last year where he had a shoulder injury and staying in AAA and sticking with it. And now here he is. I mean, his batting average is, 329? I mean, this guy, it's pretty incredible what he's doing. You put him with the trio, the advertised trio, right, of Buxton and Lewis and Correa, and it's an incredibly formidable lineup right now.
Yeah, now it's the four amigos, Dan.
There you go. Yeah. I went with Christian Vazquez. And this seems unfathomable, given kind of where he's been lately. But he had 4 hits in this series. He had an RBI in Game 1. He had 3 RBI in Game 3. He hit all of them. And this guy, okay, so I know that we joke a lot, and he is clearly the squeaky wheel of this lineup. Him and Cal Farmer, which will come up in a second. But you got to give the guy credit for sticking with it, and it feels really good to watch him have a great game like he had in Game 3 here, aside from 2 very questionable overruns on first base.
A couple of notes here, Dan. When I brought up Christian Vazquez having a good game and the way that he managed David Festo when he was struggling, I got mocked.
You did,
mercilessly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you can put him on your beast.
90%, David. 90% of the takes. People agree with me.
See, I just can't believe that this is one of them. I thought last episode I made a lot of good points about Christian Vazquez, and here you are now putting him on as your beast. I'm just a little annoyed, is all I'm saying.
All right, that's fair enough. Who do you have on your bench?
Yeah, I got to give it to Pablo, Dan. Only 5 innings pitched, 8 hits. They were seeing him so well. 6 earned runs. I'm nervous. And we talked about this at length on the way home, Dan. Was last year's Pablo Lopez the real Pablo Lopez, or is this year's Pablo Lopez closer to the real deal? And I just don't know what it is, but in order for this team to succeed in the playoffs, assuming there's not a massive overhaul of the starting rotation at the trade deadline, which there will not be, Pablo Lopez needs to play better baseball.
I think that there's something wrong with him, and I hope that it's something that they can figure out. Maybe it's mechanically, maybe it's something else. Dare we say maybe, is there a spot where he ends up on the injured list for a little while to figure things? I don't know, but he cannot have the ERA he's got, which is over 5 right now, and you're totally right. They're not going to win a playoff series with him pitching this way.
No, can't be done. Who do you have in your bench, Dan?
Well, so I went with Kyle Farmer. You know, he was 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts in this series, and I get we're not asking a lot from Kyle Farmer. I just do think at some point, is it not in the Twins' best interest to cut him? But then, if you have some injuries, I guess I'd rather have Kyle Farmer than Eddie Julian? I don't know. Like,
I love how long it took you to come up with a
I don't
name.
know. Anyway, so he's on my bench. He's pretty irrelevant right now, aside from being maybe an emergency fill-in or a late-game defensive sub.
Yes, I don't know why they keep him and Margot on the roster other than they need guys who can play those positions. But as we talked about at length, Dan, on other episodes, Manny Margot is not a good fielder.
No, he's not.
And so I don't know, is it a scouting error or like who made the mistake to bring in Manny Margot and market him as Buxton's backup? Mm-hmm. And then somebody must have known that was a real bad idea because he never plays center field as a backup for Byron Buxton.
No, and thank goodness Byron's playing healthy center field. This team would be in such a bad situation if he wasn't able to play some center field.
Okay, well, let's keep pushing here, Dan. Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
So this is what bothers me. As I was already annoyed about Christian Vazquez and everything going his way, he's one of those guys who like slips and falls but manages to make it look cool somehow. I don't know how this happens, but it bothered me almost every at-bat he came up later in games that he wasn't pinched for. And Rocco, somebody explain this to me. I do not understand why you were so afraid to use Jeffers in those moments when you had lots of opportunities to hit for Christian Vazquez. And of course, I say that Vazquez, in the 2 times that I think he should have been pinched for, he got a hit, and then he got a walk-off homer. And again, I can't let that change the way I feel about Christian Vazquez. I still would have preferred he get pinched for in those moments.
No, but I thought that Game 3 he should have batted. I thought it was as well managed because I would rather have Jeffers batting third in that inning for Larnach. I don't mind it in that situation. Vazquez has been better lately, but he never seems, well, I say this, he's hit 2 home runs in the last week, but like he doesn't seem like he can hit the ball much beyond the infield, but that's kind of his sweet spot. If you can just get it between the outfielder and the infield, even if it's 85 miles an hour, that's a hit.
I guess. Yeah. I don't know. It really bothers me. But what do you have for Rocco, Dan?
All right, so we talked about this in Game 1. I even tweeted about it a little bit on X, but I am frustrated about the way that Rocco managed Game 1. And I'm going to phrase it this way. If Game 1 is Game 1 of a playoff series, how differently, if at all, does Rocco manage that game, especially when the Twins are down 7-5?
Yeah, I think that Jax, who was already warming, probably comes in. But it is a 2-run differential there, Dan. And yes, I agree that this Twins team has shown the ability to come back in games, but you're the one who always promotes the idea that Rocco is managing for the next game and for the series. And
you're totally right.
Even in some cases for the homestand, which I think is the most ridiculous thing you've ever said on the show.
Well, he did in the okay, go ahead.
But anyway, so what I'm saying is I don't think the way that he managed was terrible, thinking that this game, the only way that they're going to win is the Twins are going to need to do some offense. However, yeah, it did look a little silly to lose it 12-13 when you look at the pitchers who were throwing for the Twins.
I think because Griffin Jax had warmed up. Why not? Where is Rocco's gut? And does Rocco not have a gut? Was it removed in some childhood accident or something like that? Because if I'm watching this game, and I'm not the Twins manager, but don't I have a feeling like, hey, I think my team can come back and win this baseball game? Let's give Griffin Jax the 8th. And I think he would in a playoff game. I think he would say, Griffin, you got to take the 8th because, especially in a short series, you want to win that baseball game. But it's how different could this have been if it's 7-5 going into the night? I don't know. It's not a fair question. I understand why he did that. I'm just frustrated because in hindsight then, and they didn't need him in Game 2 either, right? As it kind of worked out. It's me merely saying that sometimes playing for the next game doesn't work out, and I think this is a situation where potentially it didn't work out that way.
I just think we're going to start calling you Marty because, like, all of your assumptions are based upon being able to time travel and know what happened. And I just think you can't keep doing that in sports. So I was watching the F1 race this morning, and one team made a call to go to inners for tires, and another team decided to go on soft, and another team decided to go on mediums, and it turned out that hard tire were actually the way to go. And it's like one of those things where, yeah, hindsight is really easier to make that decision.
I know it is. I know.
But like, no, you seem to be arguing that, like, you're mad at Rocco based upon you knowing things that you wouldn't already know, and then saying, but I still would have done it based upon the potential. And I just don't think it works, Dan.
I still would have done it because it felt like a game the Twins were going to win. They were, I mean, they had 42 hits in this series? Have faith in your team, Rocco, to come back and win this series. That's all.
Okay, well, let's go on to Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
So I got to go with Lee's first homer, Dan. Mainly because I called it, and secondly, after his family went through quite the struggle to get to the stadium to watch him play.
I got to say this. I have looked up flights to San Luis Obispo before. It's a very difficult place to get to, so it must be a very difficult place to get from, I suppose, as well.
But anyway, I think his mom, Dan, Brooks Lee's mom, is still crying. It was so funny. They kept, like, panning over to her after the home run, and it's just a constant stream of tears. I hope she was well hydrated.
But wouldn't you be crying too if your son was out
crying?
There?
I was crying on the couch, Dan. I'm not saying it's wrong of her to be crying. I just hope she was well hydrated between the heat and the tears.
I mean, we're going to talk more about Brooks Lee later, but yes, he looks like he is here to stay. I went with Vazquez's walk-off in Game 3 because I was there.
What drama, what a game, what a finish.
I saw it happen. There's no more exciting play, I think, than a walk-off. I suppose the walk-off when you're behind versus when you're tied is maybe more exciting. I felt good for him. I don't know. It's hard to beat the walk-off.
It is hard to beat the walk-off. As we've talked about, the only thing that rivals it is a go-ahead homer.
Right,
exactly. At any other point in the game, but a walk-off still trumps it. It's the top of the pyramid, Dan.
All right, let's go on to Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
I said this, and for the record, I asked this to you before Friday night's game.
You did, yes.
How outlandish would you say this statement is? In 1 to 2 years, Jose Miranda will be seen as one of the most dangerous hitters in baseball.
Outlandish. I mean, like, it's still outlandish.
I just don't think it is.
But the other guys on that list of guys who have had hits in 12 straight games they were unrecognizable to me.
And I get that, but I'm not saying that because of the streak, Dan. I'm saying because of the season. Like, the streak is impressive, don't get me wrong, but that's not what put it into my mind. It wasn't like, oh, he's going to get 10 in a row here going into Friday night's game. What put it into my mind was the 5-for-5 game and the rest of the season, how I've seen him play, Dan. And what have I said about it? He sees those high balls out of the zone so well. I don't understand why pitchers are throwing there, but I just think he's patient. He understands when to swing, when not to. I think he's going to be great.
So I guess where I would take this is there were a lot of great hitters in the sport of baseball. Right. And so Jason Stark actually had his list on The Athletic he kind of assessed Hall of Fame status for a lot of players, and he probably mentioned 50 names. Jose Miranda's not on any of those lists right now. And I get you're not saying he's a Hall of Famer right now. I'm just saying it depends on how you define one of the most dangerous hitters. Are we talking top 30?
No. I'll say that he'll receive MVP votes.
It's possible. I mean, like, this is what the Twins have going for them right now, is that they have 5-6 hitters right now who are excellent, right? And I'm actually kind of including Brooks Lee in that right now. Let's say you got Royce, you got Carlos Correa, you got Byron Buxton. Heck, Ryan Jeffers on a good day. Willie Cash. They have so much depth right now that I think that raises everybody's average just a little bit. They got so many guys on base. It's so hard to pitch to this Twins team right now. But Jose Miranda's elevation of his game is a major part of that. He's batting 329 right now. His OPS is nearly 900. If he had been doing this a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago, he might be the all-star.
So Dan, I feel like sometimes I say something you say how it's wrong, and then you go forward to make the case that I'm making. Right, I don't understand what's happening.
So yes, I think it's possible that happens, but let's see where he's at in a month. Let's see if he comes off of this heater or if he's able to still kind of hit 300 over the next month.
I think you should have said not outlandish with the way you just spoke about him. That's how I feel about it.
All right, I will say it's not outlandish.
Okay, what do you have, Dan, for Mauer's?
All right, well, speaking of outlandish things, so is Brooks Lee destined to be...
He is the one.
Is he going to play? Are they going to find? I don't know how this is going to happen. Is he going to play third base forever because his namesake is Brooks Robinson, the great Baltimore Orioles third baseman, Brooks Robinson, or will he make a name for himself at a different position?
I don't know if I fully understand the question.
Well, I don't.
Guess,
yeah. Is he going to be great or not? That's my question.
I don't know. I think it's way too small of a sample size. Well, I'm so tired of saying that. If there's a phrase that I say on this podcast other than me being upset, I'm sure there's phrases I repeat. It has to be small sample size.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know. I am super curious how long he stays up. That's what I assumed your question would be. You took it a little bit more of a macro perspective. I was looking at the micro,
right.
But I would say I hope that Brooks Lee stays up with this team for a considerable length of time, unless he falls into a slump like we saw Austin Martin do or Matt Wallner, obviously. But I think that he needs to stay on this roster, whether he's going to be great or not. I'm not really willing.
So five
guess.
games is not enough.
No, not
you
quite.
access the Hall of Fame credentials of Brooks Lee.
No, so my Twins Mount Rushmore, it's Lewis and Brooks Lee and Jose Miranda and Christian Vazquez, apparently.
There you go. Well, the last week. Yeah, no, I guess that's fair. He feels like when you watch him in person, he's just a guy who knows how to hit. His dad's a college baseball coach. I just think he's going to stick around. I don't think he's leaving this roster the rest of the year.
I hope not. I hope you're accurate about that. Let's go forward here and grade the series, Dan.
Series grades.
Maybe this grade is elevated by the fact that I got to enjoy beautiful weather at Target Field, fellowship with friends. I mean, it was
along with those beverages.
I mean, it comes with it. So here we go. So advanced retreat, a 9 out of 10. They took 2 out of 3 against a very hot Houston team. I think the Astros had come in like 12 of their last 14. They'd won. So 9 out of 10 there. Well played baseball. I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10 because it was so fun to watch. It was just like there was baseball in front of me. There were home runs hit that were memorable. You could question some of the base running choices, and the pitching was not fantastic.
This category is meaningless. This category is absolutely meaningless. You don't even care how well they played in. You're just like, I'm going to base it off the series result.
So I'm going to change the category just for today to atmosphere. I'm writing it in. Okay. Atmosphere at Target Field.
Will the Min for the Win Almanac keepers please update the number of times Dan has changed his rubric?
All right. Anyway, 19 out of 20 today.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give him a B+, mainly because Game 1 was an absolute mess. And then in Game 3, you shouldn't have needed a Christian Vazquez walk-off home run. You went 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position, and your starter gave you far more innings than he probably had any right to do after the way that he struggled early. I just think that a B+ is where it belongs because of the lack of offensive production in Game 3. And again, Game 1, where I still don't think that game happened, Dan. We were in some sort of Matrix scenario. I don't understand it.
That was such a bizarre baseball game. Anyway, all right, let's move on here to Herbie's headlines.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Really only one note here. So Carlos Correa is the Twins' lone All-Star, which is a little bit disappointing. You can find the list of All-Stars out on the web here, so we're not going to break that down here. However, a quick note, Dan, about your guy, Eddie Rosario, who was in St. Paul this weekend. He was playing for the Braves AAA team versus the Saints, which is just so exciting for you, Dan.
I almost wanted to go Saturday night. It was between that and playing board games with you, so I chose the board games because we so infrequently get to do that. But yes, Eddie Rosario was in town. How humbling for the 32-year-old Eddie Rosario to be playing at St. Paul. They actually they beat up on the Saints, I think, pretty well in this series. But yes, Eddie was in town. For anybody who was listening, I hope you got to go see him play. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. Let's go on to Puckett's picks for the White Sox series.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's picks.
Okay, so the listeners are going to take Correa, and actually, just to note here how they phrased it, they said, we're going to go with Carlos Steel-Handed All-Star Correa.
Adamantium might have been the word that I used, but yes, this man's bones cannot be broken, it seems.
Wonderful. And then it goes to you, actually, Dan.
So, I got a feeling here that I think Brooks Lee, the switch hitter, is going to do some pretty cool things against the terrible White Sox. I think the Twins want to give him a lot of at-bats. I'm going to go with Brooks Lee and not some of the other choices out there.
Wow. That leaves Miranda on the table, and so I wish I could take him, but Hoag's picks next. So he's going to take Miranda. Then it goes to me. I got to take Buxton. I think he's been hot. He's been good. I've been talking him up as of late. We're going to go with Byron Buxton.
He did look really good in this series. Then again, the home run, he had some other hits. Some good options. So many options right now for this Twins team.
Yeah, well, so last quick note here. Happy birthday to Corey Provis and Dan Gladden, who both have birthdays today, Dan.
Yeah, I guess maybe this is why they had to break them up. Like, too much celebration. Now Provis is on the TV, and Dan Gladden is still working with Atterbury. Also, it should be noted there's some fun different teams coming up with the radio and the TV cast on this road trip for Twins fans, so they should be sure to check those out. But pretty cool. It's a grueling season, David. I know that I have seen some people say on Twitter and other places, hey, why do these announcers need games off? Well, those road trips are long. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. It's a lot of time away from families. I think it's well deserved to have a break.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with that, Dan, it's been so fun to have you here the last few days, spending some time together in real life. This is actually the most time since you've moved that we've got to spend together in a consecutive span.
And you have a very comfortable couch, David,
yeah.
So it was fantastic. I think I will go ahead and send us out.
Please do.
Folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win, and you can find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite platform so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon, link in the description. Also, if I dropped a sticker on your car on my walk away today, please listen. And to any new listeners, we give you a big thanks. Thank you for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.